SABC News. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
13 minutes past 6, and this is the time in Rise and Shine where we give you a concise roundup of stories making news in and around our continent. So what you could have missed yesterday that you need to catch up with, or maybe you just want a different angle from what you saw being reported yesterday. And today we start with Tanzania, where the ruling party, the CCM there, has released its list of primary nominees after a series of delays and important development in the country's political scene. The announcement, made after a lengthy Central Committee meeting, reflects President Samia Suluhu Hassan's tightening grip on power as internal party reforms continue. Daniel Kijo reports from Dar es Salaam.
The approved list includes candidates for parliamentary and local council seats, with the party's leadership emphasizing a commitment to unity and discipline. This follows weeks of internal debates and postponements as CCM sought to realize its lineup ahead of the upcoming primaries. Analysts say the list reflects President Samia's growing influence within the party, with key allies securing nominations while some dissenting voices were sidelined. The primaries, now set to proceed after the delays, will determine CCM's final candidates for the general elections later this year. However, critics argue that the process lacks transparency, raising concerns about internal democracy within Tanzania's long-dominant ruling party. With the elections approaching, all eyes on whether CCM can maintain its stronghold amid calls for greater political openness. Daniel Kijo, Dar es Salaam.
The Islamic State militant group has claimed responsibility for a deadly assault on a church in eastern DRC that left at least 43 worshippers dead. The attack took place at dawn on Sunday in the village of Komanda. Armed with guns and machetes, Islamic State-linked fighters stormed the church during a night mass, killing congregants and taking hostages.
Responsibility for the assault was claimed by the Allied Democratic Forces, an Islamic State-affiliated militant group. The attackers claimed lives with guns and machetes, while also taking hostages. On its Telegram channel, the Islamic State said that rebels had killed some 45 churchgoers and burned dozens of homes and shops. The UN mission to the country condemned the attack and reported at least 43 deaths, including 19 women and 9 children. The ADF originates in neighboring Uganda, but is now based in mineral-rich eastern Congo. It mounts frequent attacks, further destabilizing a region where many militant groups compete for influence and resources.
Along Tunisia's southern Mediterranean coast, rising seas and coastal erosion are threatening entire communities. In Kerkena, a fragile archipelago, the sea is steadily swallowing land, livelihoods, and cultural heritage. Alice Rizzo reports.
More than 35% of Tunisia's beaches are eroding, according to a 2021 World Bank report. Some areas, it's said, are losing up to 8 meters a year. Here is geographer Samir Laikbaili.
Over the last 30 years, we've observed significant erosion of beaches in Kerkena due to natural climatic factors, mainly rising sea levels caused by increasing temperatures, and human factors such as concentrating many buildings right on the coast, which has blocked the shoreline's natural evolution in Kerkena.
Coastal erosion infiltrates inland soil, damaging ecosystems and contaminating farmland with salt. The Tunisian Ministry of Environment warns that around 60 islands are at high risk of submersion due to sea level rise.
At least 4 people were killed and hundreds arrested during protests in Angola over a recent fuel price hike as unrest continued in parts of the capital, Luanda, on Tuesday. The violence broke out on Monday with incidents of looting, vandalism, and clashes with police following the government's move earlier this month to raise diesel prices by 33% in a bid to curb the strain of fuel subsidies on public finances. David Doyle has more.
Several people were reported killed and many arrested following looting and clashes with police. Angola hiked the diesel price by 1/3 this month. That's as part of a long-running drive by the Southern African oil producers' government to curb costly subsidies and shore up public finances. A petrol price hike in 2023 also triggered deadly protests. On Monday, minibus tax associations, who have hiked fares by up to 50%, started a 3-day strike. In the protests, the Novo Jornal newspaper reported that at least 3 people had been killed, including a police officer. The police said in a statement that shops in Luanda had been looted and that arrests had been made, though they did not provide a number.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news on Rise and Shine.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatami.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture, they influence people's thought processes, they set trends, they shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that embarking in that journey and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses. So the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Now, in an effort to advance women's rights in Africa, the Pan-African Parliament has been called upon to lead a coordinated and urgent campaign for the ratification of the African Union Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls. Now, the convention adopted by the African Union in 2024 marks the first comprehensive and legally binding continental framework solely dedicated to eradicating violence against women and girls. Nhlanhla Mahlangu has more.
The call to action was amplified during a session in Midrand, located in Johannesburg, South Africa, with passionate pleas from Vice Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Janet Salanje. She emphasized the urgent need for a binding legal instrument to confront gender-based violence across the continent.
I appeal to honorable parliamentarians across our continent to exercise your critical leadership in making this instrument a tangible reality for African women and girls. The time for decision and action is now, and your role as legislative champions is indispensable in this historical endeavor. I therefore specifically urge you to be the voice of change in your parliaments. Proactively educate your parliamentary colleagues on the Convention's transformative potential.
The African Commission on Human and People's Rights, alongside the AU Special Envoy and the PEP Women Caucus, has made it clear that the time for symbolic gestures is over. Lindiwe Mugabe, Program Specialist on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls at the African Union Commission, says what is needed now is legislative courage, political will, and a united continental momentum. She urged African nations to accelerate the ratification of the convention.
It's been 30 years since Beijing, and we are still crying, and we're crying a louder cry because of the regression in gender norms and all the hard-won gains that we had, we seem to be rolling back. But I also want to appreciate the honorable members for their support of the convention and to reiterate that the Gender Directorate stands ready to support them in their signing process, in the ratification, and also in the implementation of the campaign towards ratification.
Sierra Leone Member of Parliament Rosemary Bankura says the AU Convention is not only timely, but urgent.
It provides a continental platform to standardize protection, enhance collaboration, and uphold each other accountable. Mr. President, I call on all members here today present to work with our national government to ratify, domesticate, and implement the convention. Let us align our national action plans with these provisions and ensure our parliaments have the tools and resources needed to perform effective oversights. Because Africa cannot rise while its women and girls are living in fear. This convention signals our resolve to create a continent where no woman or girl is unsafe, unheard, or unseen. Let us rise to this challenge together. I know African women will be liberated.
6 AU member states, Djibouti, Angola, the Gambia, DRC, Burundi, and Liberia, have signed the convention, but none have ratified it. 15 ratifications are needed for it to enter into force. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The 3-day 10th annual Southern Africa Malaria Research Conference began on Tuesday in South Africa's capital, Pretoria. The organizers say this year they are expecting delegates and researchers from 14 countries, mostly from Southern Africa and even beyond African borders. The conference is an initiative of the South African Medical Research Council Malaria Research Group, or MRG. Sisi Sekhalo attended the first day of the conference and has more on the story.
The conference being held under the theme Shaping the Agenda to Meet the Malaria Elimination End Goal creates a platform particularly for emerging scientists to showcase their work as well as give them the opportunity to network with the wider malaria community in the region. With the goal of malaria elimination now being moved to 2030, it has become evident that many Southern African countries are experiencing challenges in attaining their goal. Cross-border transmission, lack of resources are some of the difficulties being experienced by malaria control programs. The director for the Malaria Research Group, Professor Rajendra Maharaj, explains further on the aim of the conference.
So this is the 10th Southern African Malaria Conference, but I'll take you back to the first conference we had. The reason why we decided to host a conference of this nature was to give new and emerging scientists a platform to present their research. It's very difficult for student researchers to afford the horrendous amounts of money that's required for attending an international conference. So instead of them spending thousands of rands on attending an international conference, we thought we'd host a conference in South Africa where all our students could attend, our emerging scientists could attend, present their research, and also meet up with mentors who could, supervise their postgraduate studies, PhDs, masters as well.
Dr. Lauren Coulson is the chief investigator at the Holistic Drug Discovery and Development Center at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. She was one of the speakers and shares some of her insights.
I think we all aware that there's an urgent need for new antimalarials, which will need to replace antimalarials for which drug resistance is emerging, and I think it's really important that we contribute to drug discovery as Africans on this continent, and so really contributing to the global efforts to identify new drugs and to build capacity and pipelines to be able to address the needs towards the eradication of malaria.
Felma Vinga is the program manager for the Anglican Diocese of Harare Cross-Border Malaria Initiative. Her focus was on high risk in malaria for unprotected population like miners, fishermen, and farmers.
Why we are saying that they are unprotected is that because of their nature of their work. They are working outside the homes, they are working outside the villages which are protected with vector control, that is the ITNs, the nets, and also IRS, indoor residual spraying, that is covered only in the household. For them, their work is mostly active during dusk to dawn. This is when mosquitoes are active as well. So this means that they are working when they are also in high risk of getting malaria bites, mosquito bites, and getting malaria infection. We have engaged these populations in trying to conduct them in a targeted key messaging that help to have them understand malaria risk and also prevention strategies and also treatment-seeking behavior.
Another delegate is Monitor Chimango from Zimbabwe. He's the program manager for the Methodist Church in Zimbabwe, Harare East District, under the Flowers Cross-Border Malaria Initiative. He outlines what he expects to gain from the conference.
As East of Flowers Cross-Border Malaria Initiative, we are mostly focusing on the community, but especially on the social behavior change aspect. But by being here at the conference, I think it's our opportunity to meet other colleagues, both in malaria. We can say together we can end malaria. So by having some new ideas from other colleagues, we can be able to copy from others and others copying from us, so that we can try to harmonize and to implement what is best for our community in terms of malaria prevention and elimination.
The second day of the conference will have a presentation on the impact of cross-border movement on malaria elimination in the African region. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Pretoria, South Africa.
Right, we'll continue with more news in and around our continent and highlighting those stories that you need to get in the know about. This is Rise and Shine. At Channel Africa 1 is where we are live streaming to you, and that's on YouTube. So thank you for tuning in. Let's get our news headlines now. It's 6:30 Central African Time. Here is Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Cameroon opposition leader Maurice Kamto has called for calm following his exclusion from the upcoming presidential elections set for October. The Electoral Commission's decision has sparked concerns of unrest and is seen as a boost to 92-year-old current President Paul Biya. Burkina Faso says that it considers the death of Burkinabe activist Alien Traoré in custody in Ivory Coast to be an assassination. He was arrested 6 months ago in Ivory Coast and is said to have taken his own life while being held at a military academy. And the Australian government has announced that it will ban under-16s from having YouTube accounts. I'll have more details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now for a first look at what's been happening in the world of sport. Here's Musibudi Makura. Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start here. So Burkina Faso is determined now to make a mark at the upcoming Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship, which kicks off on Saturday, the 2nd of August in Tanzania, one of the three host nations, along with Kenya as well as Uganda. Now, the West African nation will have the honor of playing the opening match of the competition, squaring off against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania in what promises to be a high-octane clash. So drawn in Group B alongside the Central African Republic, Mauritania, Madagascar as well as Tanzania, the Stallions will look now to improve on their past performances in the competition, led by the head coach Issa Balwan, who will took over the reins in April of 2024. The team recently concluded a vital pre-tournament training camp in Morocco. So despite also being one of the consistent participants in CHAN history, Burkina Faso have never ever lifted at this title, so they'll be hoping to do something special in the year 2025. On to some rugby news now. The Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus is anticipating a much more physical as well as a difficult test matches when they play against Australia in the Rugby Championship next month. A group of 37 players have assembled in Johannesburg for a 2-week-long training camp ahead of the defence of their title. Included in the squad are 3 Rugby World Under-20 Championship winners from the junior Springboks. The Boks also are fresh from beating the Barbarians, Italy twice, as well as Georgia in recent weeks, but Erasmus is expecting a much more physical battle against the Wallabies of Australia. All right, apologies, we do not have that sound at the moment. Included in the squad also are 3 World Rugby Under-20 Championship winners. There are Batubele Hlanagane, there's also Cheswell Yuster, as well as Hashim Peed, who starred for the junior Boks en route to South Africa's second Under-20 title. The trio are also unlikely to get a look into the Boks squad for the Rugby Championship, but Erasmus has explained the thinking, of course, behind getting them into this squad and involved in the senior setup of the Springbok squad. On to some tennis news now. Alexander Zverev made a storming return after a month away from tennis on Tuesday, with a top seed pounding out a 7-6, 6-3 win over Adam Walton to reach the third round of the ATP Toronto Masters tournament. Now, the German top seed, who lost in the Wimbledon first round just a few weeks back, has spent the last few weeks dealing with mental burnout and also made a trip to Rafael Nadal's Mallorca Academy for consultations as well as perhaps some career advice during his time away. The ATP world number 3 came from 4-1 down in the opening set tiebreaker and also did not face a break point until he found himself down 5-3 in the first set. Though he lost that game, the German immediately broke back with his Australian opponent double faulting on a Zverev match point. So his victory also included a massive 52-shot rally, with the triumph also putting him now at 499 wins in his career, and will be hoping to make it 500 wins when he makes it into the second round of this competition. And finally, India head coach Gautam Gambhir has been involved in a confrontation with Surrey ground staff during a training session before a Thursday's 5th and final test match against England at the Oval. So video footage from the net session shows the coach pointing his finger at Lee Fortes, who's Surrey's head of ground staff, and the India coach also can be heard shouting in our quote, "You can't tell us anything, you just a groundsman, nothing beyond close quote." Now, speaking in a news conference afterwards, India batter coach Shinachu Kotak was also present during the incident, said the coaches were inspecting the wicket for the test and were asked to move away. So with no specific outdoor practice area, India used 3 practice wickets surrounded by nets close to the test match pitch, which is a standard procedure. The incident is the latest in a heated as well as competitive series between the two sides, with the 4th test at Old Trafford ending with India refusing to shake hands for the draw early as Ravindra Jadeja as well as Washington Shandu reached their centuries. Now, the Indian skipper Shabmun Gill also said England were acting against a spirit of cricket with time-wasting tactics during the 3rd test at Lord's. England lead the 5-match series 2-1, and Ben Stokes' side are expected to make changes to the team for the Manchester draw, also particularly in the bowling lineup after 3 days in between test matches. That's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126, and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business as we say good morning to Chandruko Ligege to check in with our economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Dangote Refinery has withdrawn its lawsuit against Nigeria's midstream and downstream petroleum regulator and several fuel importers, including state-owned Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, over fuel imports. Dangote Refinery had brought a lawsuit arguing that the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency is violating the law by continuing to issue gasoline import permits to NNPC and other fuel traders. In its suit filed at Nigeria's Federal High Court, it says that the law only allows imports to address production shortfalls. The case is still scheduled to be heard in September, when the defendants may either seek costs or waive them, allowing the court to formally strike out the suit. Police say violent protests in Angola over a fuel price hike killed at least 4 people and led to hundreds of arrests, with unrest continuing in a few parts of the capital, Luanda. Monday's violence, which involved looting, acts of vandalism and clashes with police, followed a government decision early this month to increase the diesel price by 1/3 to ease the strain of costly fuel subsidies on public finances. Minibus taxi associations, which in turn hiked their fares up by 50%, launched a 3-day strike to protest the move on Monday when the violence erupted. South Africa's Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe says South Africa should not be bullied into trading its critical minerals based on unfavorable terms and conditions. He says South Africa should not be apologetic for being a BRICS partner because it destabilizes the balance of forces and global leadership. He was delivering a keynote address at the G20 Critical Mineral Engagement in Sandton in north of Johannesburg. Meanwhile, Mantashe has stressed the importance of Africa processing its own minerals instead of exporting raw materials to countries that impose high tariffs. The engagement is being held under the theme Harnessing Critical Minerals for Inclusive Growth and Sustainable Development. In other news, the International Monetary Fund says it was carefully looking at the details of the trade agreements the U.S. has struck with Japan and the EU in recent days to assess their economic impact. Chief Economist and Director of the IMF's Research Department, Pierre-Olivier Gorinkas, says they will have to see how things are unfolding, adding that the trade agreements announced so far were high-level deals that still need to be fleshed out. Gorinkas says, however, tariffs agreed so far in those deals were similar to the effective U.S. tariff rate on which the IMF based its latest assumptions in its update to the World Economic Outlook. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 527. Botswana 13 pula 28. Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 38. Zambia 23 kwacha 27. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 58, Russia 80 rubles 13, India 86 rupees 63, China 7 yuan 18, South Africa 17 rand 83 cents. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound, 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,312, platinum at $1,401 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $69.96 a barrel. That is all. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It's time now for our G20 fact of the day. Now, did you know that South Africa will host approximately 130 working group meetings and 23 ministerial level meetings throughout the year? And this is ahead of the country hosting the two-day G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg from November the 22nd. And this marks the first time that the summit is held in Africa under the theme Solidarity, Equality, Sustainability. And that's our G20 fact of the day.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
South Africa's Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Beda has called on mining companies and industry leaders to strike a balance between the commercial exploitation of critical minerals and meeting their environmental, social and governance or ESG obligations. The minister was speaking at the G20 Critical Minerals Stakeholder Engagement held in Johannesburg, South Africa, under the theme Harnessing Critical Minerals for Inclusive Growth and Sustainable Development. Mantashe emphasized that Africa should prioritize processing its own minerals rather than exporting raw materials to countries that impose heavy tariffs. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
The Department of Minerals Resources presented the vision, principles and core pillars of its critical minerals framework. The session united stakeholders from government, industry, labor and the general public to engage in meaningful dialogue on the G20 Critical Minerals Framework. Additionally, Ambassador Dave Malcolmson presides as a chair of the G20 Task Force 1.
As demand grows across multiple sectors, ensuring secure, transparent and sustainable supply chains for critical minerals has become a shared strategic priority for G20 members and the global community. In terms of our G20 theme, the framework recognizes that solidarity among G20 members must extend beyond securing supply chains to empowering resource-rich countries through technology transfer, skills development and investment in infrastructure and local beneficiation. Equality demands a redefinition of critical minerals, as you heard the Minister saying, to encompass the priorities of developing nations, industrialization, job creation and food security alongside traditional strategic concerns.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Mantashe, says the continent must leverage its mineral wealth to drive industrialization and economic inclusion.
Our coal must be processed here and not take it to Richards Bay. So those reliant are going to pay the price, but the reality of the matter is that as we export raw commodities, we're exporting wealth and we're exporting jobs. And we must change that, and to do that we must work together. We must collaborate. And as a result of that, resource-rich countries face a predicament where they not only export minerals in raw form, but they equally export the jobs and profits.
The minister says the country is making steps in the right direction in developing the clean coal technologies.
Yeah, clean coal, if you go to Leandra, you'll find a facility there that we're developing of carbon capture, storage and use. You'll find it there, because we think that if we successfully implement that project, we'll clean our coal. Then we can duplicate that experiment somewhere else. And that's why we've been trying to talk to coal producers and say, build a coal power station next to Leandra and see if this technology works effectively.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun. Now, this is a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting on the 13th of July, 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Tune in every Sunday evening for the highs and the heartache, as well as the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, and no subscription is needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Levels of hunger are dropping around the world after declining for the third consecutive year in 2024. But in Africa, the picture is different. The African continent is trading behind, and instead, hunger and undernourishment are on the rise on the continent, says a UN report on the state of food security and nutrition in the world. Despite this decline, a staggering 2.6 billion of people in the world lacked adequate food in 2024, and this could lead to political instability if not addressed promptly. Timakatso Lishoro has filed this report.
About 500 million people will suffer from hunger by 2030 unless interventions are put in place to fast-track food security around the world. With 5 years to go ahead of the Sustainable Development Goals deadline, Goal 2 of ending hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition is proving to be a tall order as none of these objectives are on track. While levels of undernourishment globally are going down, in Africa the number is going up. Maximo Terrero is a chief economist at the Food and Agriculture Organization.
There are regions of the world that we are seeing improvements, and those are essentially Latin America and the Caribbean, where there is a reduction of the level of undernourishment in 0.2 points, Southern Asia, where there is a reduction of minus 1.2, South America, where there is a reduction of 0.4, so it's the sub-region of Latin America and the Caribbean where the biggest reduction has happened, Asia of minus 0.6, and Southeastern Asia of minus 0.3. But on the contrary, in the case of Africa, we still see a deterioration, which is an increase of 0.2 on the level of undernourishment in the world. If we project these numbers to 2030, what we observe is that we will be in around 511 million people facing chronic undernourishment if we continue at the level that we are today.
Key among the setbacks is extreme weather events, the COVID-19 pandemic and food price surges. Terrero says global food prices have gone up to 13.6%, outpacing headline inflation.
The global food price inflation has emerged as a major concern since 2021. Global food inflation was 2.3% in 2020, and it went up to 13.6% in 2023. And also, the report shows how a 10% price hike will result in 3.5% more people in food insecurity. Food price inflation is increasing, and it matters because it's a base for political stability, macroeconomic stability, and food security and nutrition. And we need to work hard to find elements that will help us to reduce those problems of stability that we are facing because of food price inflation.
The State of Food Security and Nutrition Global Report is the work of the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Food Programme. The report shows that women, especially those in remote areas, are at the coalface of hunger and malnutrition as they tend to raise and look after children. Children who may grow up being stunted and beset with lifelong challenges, including perpetual poverty.
The impact is higher in terms of rural areas, meaning the prices are less sticky to decrease in rural areas relative to urban areas. So if the commodity prices go down in rural areas or in global, the impact over rural areas will be slower in terms of reduction of prices relative to urban areas. As a result, the consumers in rural areas will be more affected. Not only that, the rural poor consume most of the basket in food, and therefore, if food prices increase, they will be more vulnerable. The same applies to the gender gap between men and women. Women are more vulnerable because they have less income, and most of their income is to buy food, and therefore, the impact of food prices increases will be higher than in the case of men.
In South Africa, higher food prices are outpacing and driving headline inflation after growing at 4% year-on-year in June. The recent data from Statistics South Africa shows that meat, especially beef, has been the biggest driver of food inflation following the outbreak of foot and mouth disease domestically. This saw increases in the price of minced meat and steak, while stewing beef grew by 21.2%, the fastest pace on record since the current CPI series began in January 2017. Vegetables also recorded notable increases, with prices of nuts, fruits, and vegetables remaining in double-digit territory for a second straight month. Sharp price increases in the 12 months to June include beetroot, lettuce, and carrots. Senior agricultural economist at First National Bank, Paul Makube, elaborates.
The FMD outbreak created a short supply crunch due to the inability to slaughter livestock, mainly cattle, while the earlier ban on Brazilian chicken imports due to bird flu outbreak caused panic in the market, as it is a major source of mechanically deboned meat, which is used in manufacturing of products such as polonies. Downside risks include a persistent exchange rate, weak international crude oil prices, the bulging global grain supply outlook, and the consequent downside pressure on prices, as well as the potential recovery in livestock slaughter rates.
The Household Affordability Index, produced by the Peter Maritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, measures food prices in various cities and towns. It puts the average cost of basic nutritional food basket for a family of 4 persons at $212, 10.6 times higher than the unemployment subsidy and 7 times higher than the current child grant, meaning households who are solely dependent on these grants don't get enough food. For Channel Africa News in Johannesburg, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro.
The United Nations World Food Programme, the WFP, is warning that Palestine's territory, Gaza, may be experiencing famine as it's exceeded the famine threshold for food consumption and malnutrition. The UN's Food Agency hopes that this week's high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine will be a turning point that will lead to viable two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. Tuto Ngobeni picks up the story for us.
At least 60,034 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since the war on Gaza erupted in October 2023. Now, the United Nations Food Agency World Food Programme, WFP, is warning that the current food consumption threshold is at a famine level. Despite the dangerous conditions, WFP remains one of the few organizations on the ground delivering food into the Gaza Strip. Ross Smith, a WFP Director of Emergencies, says mounting evidence shows that Gaza is experiencing famine. However, more analysis is needed to formally declare this.
What we're seeing is mounting evidence that a famine is there. All the signals are there. Now, what this alert published today does not do is formally declare a famine. That's something that only happens after additional analysis. That's something that might happen in the future. But what we are telling you now is that the indicators we're seeing in Gaza have exceeded the famine threshold for food consumption and for malnutrition. And what we're telling you, once again, is that action needs to take place now. We shouldn't wait for a hypothetical famine declaration to do everything we possibly can to prevent the suffering.
Smith also spoke on the humanitarian pauses and said although it's in place, they are not yet at the volumes needed to address this crisis.
We welcome these humanitarian pauses that were started on Sunday, but we are not yet getting the volumes of humanitarian assistance in that are needed despite the assurances that we can do so. So this includes not just food assistance from a WFP perspective, but nutrition support, health, medical, water, wash, etc. All of the things that are needed to alleviate the really desperate levels that we are seeing both from this IPC alert, but also on our television screens every day. We need to see much faster facilitation of our work inside Gaza. Words are not enough. We've had these commitments before. And what we're lacking is follow through on the ground.
Speaking during the hybrid press briefing on an update on the situation in Gaza, Jean-Martin Boer, the WFP Director of Food Security and Nutritional Analysis, says immediate action is needed now to avert massive human suffering.
This is quite significant, and it's the first time we've seen this in Gaza. These are two of the three indicators the IPC uses to monitor famine. We know that food consumption, malnutrition, and mortality are the indicators that are used for famine classification. What this alert says is that we're getting closer and closer to this famine, and that, of course, immediate action is needed now to avert massive human suffering.
Sophia Caltropodet, director of the United Nations Women Office in Geneva, says over 1 million women and girls are experiencing violence and abuse, and the rates of malnutrition has pushed this group to survival mode. Caltropodet says they hope this week's meeting will bring a lasting peaceful solution between the warring parties.
1 million women and girls in Gaza are facing mass starvation, violence, and abuse. Malnutrition is soaring, and essential services have long since collapsed, forcing women and girls to adopt increasingly dangerous survival strategies. In Gaza, women and girls are facing the impossible choice of starving to death at their shelters or venturing out in search of food or water at extreme risk of being killed. The children are starving to death before their eyes. This is horrific, unconscionable, and unacceptable. It is simply inhumane. And this suffering must end immediately. We need unhindered humanitarian access at scale, and we need a permanent ceasefire leading to sustainable peace. Women-led organizations inside Gaza describe how women are boiling discarded food scraps to feed their children and risking being killed when searching for food and water. We also echo the hopes that this week's high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine is a turning point, leading to a viable two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
7 o'clock Central African Time. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in to this, the second hour of Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective. And we're broadcasting from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa on www.channelafrica.co.za. Good morning, I'm Peter Ndoro.
And I'm Asanda, Beda. Thank you so much for joining us. And in this hour, we look at Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara, who's confirmed that he will seek a fourth term in the country's upcoming October elections. We also go to Kenya. Kenya's Democratic Congress Party, or the DCP, in Nairobi, or the Nairobi patron for that party, Irungu Nyakera, has questioned President William Ruto's and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's push for the use of national identity cards for their 2027 general elections. Those stories and more coming up. Let's get our news first. Here's Nolutando Butelezi, and then following her is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Cameroon opposition leader Maurice Kamto has called for calm following his exclusion from the upcoming presidential election set for October. The Electoral Commission's decision has sparked concerns of unrest and is seen as a boost to 92-year-old current President Paul Biya, who has been in power for decades. Kamto is reportedly under house arrest. He intends to appeal the Electoral Commission's decision. The MRC-CRM representative in South Africa, Nasto Njomachuni, says that the government has militarized the two biggest cities in the country.
Exactly, it is very uncomfortable, but the president has sent a message out to the population to remain calm. We all know that the decision by the Electoral Commission can be appealed to the Constitutional Council. and all the candidate has 2 days to appeal the decision. So yesterday, the party appealed the decision on the Constitutional Council, and the Constitutional Council has 10 days to reply to our appeal. So the president has sent a clear message to all his militant and sympathizers to remain calm and wait until the decision from the Constitutional Council.
Burkina Faso says that it considers the death of an activist in custody in Ivory Coast to be an assassination. Alain Traoré, commonly known as Alino Faso, was arrested 6 months ago in Ivory Coast on charges of espionage. On Saturday, the Ivorian authorities announced that 44-year-old Traoré had taken his own life 2 days prior while being held at a military academy. But Burkina Faso's information minister said that the government rejects the suicide theory, while Traoré's supporters have accused Ivory Coast of carrying out a cover-up for political repression. Traoré was a prominent advocate of the military-led governments in Burkina Faso and other countries across the Sahel region. The activist led a huge community online. On Facebook alone, he had more than 400,000 followers. South Africa's Johannesburg Mayor Dada Morero says that the city is ready to host the upcoming G20 summit that is scheduled to take place later this year. World leaders will descend into South Africa in November in the first ever G20 summit in South Africa and the continent. The G20 summit comes at a time where the city of Johannesburg had been battling infrastructural challenges that have had a negative impact on service delivery. Despite the challenges faced by the metro, Morero says that the city of Joburg is more than ready to host any top international events.
We are confident. We have already hosted almost 4 meetings. The foreign ministers was in Nazareth. There were a bit of challenges that we have corrected. There was ministers of health in Melrose. There were ministers of finance, and I think the last one was the ministers of local government who were somewhere in Sandton. So we've already hosted about 4 G20 meetings, and of course the summit is the last one, which will be hosted in November.
A UN-backed monitor, the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, says that a famine that it describes as the worst-case scenario is now unfolding in Gaza. The UN's World Food Programme says that the situation is reminiscent of famine seen in Ethiopia and Biafra in Nigeria in the last century. The BBC's Yolanda Nell has the details.
The new alert predicts widespread death in Gaza without immediate action to stop malnutrition and starvation. It comes from the IPC, which is made up of more than 20 UN agencies and aid groups. While this warning falls short of a formal famine declaration, which the IPC says is for governments or international agencies to make, it adds pressure on Israel. Already in recent days, Israeli leaders have announced new measures, including daily pauses in fighting in parts of Gaza. But the UN and Palestinians say that on the ground, little has changed. Desperate crowds continue to loot incoming aid lorries.
The death toll of 60,000 has been announced by Gaza health authorities. This dwarfs previous wars between Israel and Hamas since the group seized control of Gaza in 2007. The previous most deadly was in 2014 when 2,100 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, while Israel lost 67 soldiers and 6 civilians. Israel launched the offensive in response to Hamas attacks in October 2023, where some 1,200 people were killed, 251 taken as hostages. Palestinian officials and rescue workers say that thousands more bodies are believed to be buried under rubble, meaning that the death toll is likely to be significantly higher. For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, it's about 3 days to go until the start of the CHAN tournament, and the India head coach Gautam Gambhir involved in a confrontation with a Surrey ground staff. Details of these and other stories coming up at 7:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara has confirmed that he will seek a fourth term in the country's upcoming October elections, a move that has reignited debate around democratic norms and succession in West Africa. At age 83, Ouattara says his health is not in question and that his experience is needed to navigate economic and security challenges. But critics argue this bid undermines earlier promises to step aside for a new generation. To unpack the implications, we're joined live by Paul Melly, Consulting Fellow with the Africa Programme at Chatham House in London. Paul, thank you for joining us. How are you on this morning?
I'm very well, thank you.
So,
good morning.
Thanks for making time. What is your initial reaction to President Ouattara's announcement to run for a fourth term at the age of 83?
Well, it represents a big political challenge, actually, for him and for the country as a whole. Because, as you've pointed out, he had in fact said some time ago, in fact, before the last election, so 5 years ago, he had said that it was time to step aside for a new generation. But on that occasion, his preferred successor candidate for the election, Amadou Gon Coulibaly, his prime minister, the person that he trusted to stand for his RHDP party and carry on his work in rebuilding the Ivorian economy, died suddenly of a heart attack. And so Ouattara changed course and said that after all he would run again for another term. So although that was controversial, many Ivorians kind of got used to the idea, and the election was a difficult one. It was widely boycotted by the opposition. There was some violence, but in the end things passed off okay. The economy carried on growing, and not a small thing, Côte d'Ivoire ended up winning the last Africa Cup of Nations football tournament. And so Ouattara was seen as having pushed the bounds a bit, but many people were prepared to sort of live with that. But they sort of presumed that this time around, at 83, he would step aside and choose retirement, especially because on this occasion, which is slightly different from last time, there are 2 or 3 credible alternative candidates, both in government and in the opposition, with a slightly similar profile to him, a strong background in economics. There's a former Prime Minister, Patrick Hachi, on the government side, and most of all in the opposition, there's Tidjane Thiam, leader of the largest opposition party, the PDCI, and who had a very successful career in international finance as head of the Prudential Group and then later Credit Suisse, but who had also in the past been a minister. So a lot of people felt that this was the moment when Ouattara should have stood aside.
He says the Constitution allows it and his health is not an issue. When he made the announcement to run for a fourth term in presidency, it was via television. So do we know what he actually looks like, what Ivorians have noted that he looked like in that television announcement, and whether that supports his claims that he's healthy?
Yeah, we know that he's healthy. He's out and about. He does public events. He makes regular speeches. He's often on the international stage. He's often at international summits. He always has a slightly sort of posed, careful manner of speaking. So in a way, people won't be surprised at that. He's always had that slightly sort of, I suppose you'd say, not a quick way of speaking, but he's very much clearly in command of his faculties. And he's a former number 3 in the IMF, second deputy managing director of the International Monetary Fund. He was the highest ranking African in the international system before he returned to politics. But still, a lot of people feel that the fact that he's fit and well and capable at 83 doesn't alter the fact that serving a full mandate, that will take him through to 88. And that's obviously quite a few years older. And this is a tough time to be president of Côte d'Ivoire. West Africa is facing huge challenges following the breakaway of the 3 Sahel states ruled by military governments, which have quit ECOWAS, the regional bloc. And there are tough challenges adjusting in terms of security as well, because the jihadist groups that have spread across the Sahel have been attacking the north of the coastal countries. So that there's an awful lot to tackle in the region, but there's also the sensitive question of democratic renewal. And while some of the potential candidates in Côte d'Ivoire have been excluded from this election because of conviction for past offences across a range of offences, there's been some question whether those convictions are politically motivated, and also or whether the decision not to grant pardons, or whether, for example, in the case of Mr. Cham, who's been excluded just on the grounds of a more or less technical irregularity about when he recovered his Ivorian nationality and whether that was in time to register for the electoral roll. A lot of people see that particular exclusion as essentially an excuse, a sort of manipulation of the system, or an unwillingness to show flexibility because the voters' roll could have been updated to allow him to take part. And so all that raises a very difficult question for Ouattara's decision to run again this time.
And one of those questions would be, how competitive will this election be seen to be? As you mentioned, several leading opposition figures have been barred from running. And if there are any viable challengers left who could pose a serious threat?
Yes, that's a very good point. We really can't see an obvious viable challenger because, in a sense, the momentum that might have carried a younger generation challenger, someone with new, not so much youth appeal, because Tidjane Thiam himself is in his 60s, but nevertheless the appeal of a change, if you like. There aren't really, not with serious momentum and political weight. So many people will feel that it's not an election that has a sort of, is offering people a realistic, full, wide choice of the political options on offer. And another important factor is that Côte d'Ivoire, it's the second largest economy in West Africa after Nigeria. It's a big regional player. It's a country that has a very strong idea of itself and its importance as a regional role, and it's been seen as a sort of core foundation of economic and political strength and stability in the region. And so many Ivorians, their feeling is, if in Ghana, next door, people have now had several elections where they have changed usually every couple of terms, they've changed the party in power. And after all, Ghanaians only last December threw out the incumbent government and elected John Mahama as their president. In Senegal last year, again, the incumbent, although it wasn't the incumbent president who was running again, his party was also thrown out and replaced by President Faye. And in Nigeria, although the same party remained in power at the last election, again, there was a change of leader. So many Ivorians will feel, well, if these other big West African countries can perfectly well function the democratic process, then surely they too should have a change, both a change of generation, but also the capacity to make a slightly different choice. And,
well, we'll be watching very closely
policy
between
choices are not massive
now and October 25th. Let's leave it there for today, Paul. Thank you so much again for your insights. We appreciate them.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Great. Paul Medi is Consulting Fellow with the Africa Program at Chatham House, talking of politics in Ivory Coast as President Alassane Ouattara has confirmed via television announcement that he's going to be running for a fourth term.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126 and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, tensions are simmering in Kenya's political landscape as questions emerge about potential changes to the country's voting process ahead of the 2027 general elections. Irungu Nyakera, who's the Nairobi patron of the Democratic Congress Party, the DCP, has accused both President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga of pushing for the abandonment of the official voter register. This in favor of using national ID cards alone as proof of eligibility to vote. Now, Nyakera claims that this move is not just unconstitutional, but part of a coordinated effort to rig the next elections, and he goes further to allege that a covert plan is underway to prevent young people from the GMA communities, that's Gikuyu, Embu, Menu, from acquiring ID cards and registering to vote. Let's try and unpack all of this and the legal implications of these claims and what it might mean for Kenya's democracy. And we're joined by Gordon Kacholo, who's a foreign policy consultant based in Nairobi. Gordon, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program. All right, okay. It looks like we're struggling to connect with Gordon in Kenya, but a fascinating development taking place there. He's accusing two people who were at one point rivals, the current president, Ruto, and long-time runner-up Raila Odinga, for both of them being accused of already setting into motion things that could be perceived as trying to rig the elections. So we're going to try and unpack and see if using national ID cards alone as proof of identity is sufficient for voting processes. For other things in life, it is fine. Okay, let's see if we've got Gordon on the line now. Gordon, are you there?
Yes, Peter. Good morning.
Gordon, thanks so much indeed for joining us. What's your reaction to Irungu Nyakera's claims that President Ruto and Raila Odinga are colluding to rig the 2027 elections?
Well, Peter, even before we go to Irungu Nyakera's claims, we must all realize that after 2007 post-election violence, when John Krigler, the South African judge, came to Kenya, there are recommendations he made. Have we ever followed those recommendations? At least in the last two elections we have. But in this election, are we up to par? We are almost lagging behind in that. So already we are not where we need to be as a country as far as election preparedness is concerned. But that notwithstanding, claims to rig elections often come around during this particular hour, because whenever we are going to election, Kenya's elections are always very intense. But there is no any election that has never had claims of rigging. I heard him say that the president wants everyone to use an ID card instead of a voter's card to vote. Look, before you even participate in an election, you must confirm that you are Kenyan. How do you confirm that you are Kenyan? By having an ID. We are trying to run away from the fact that people must be having a particular document in order to vote, apart from confirming that they are Kenyans. It is not just proper for our politicians in Kenya to throw claims here and there. Yes, Kenyan elections have been marred by rigging claims over and over again, but I think it is only proper that politicians take into consideration the fact that the people who take part in these elections learn to get the best out of it. So when you throw election rigging claims 2 years, even before the real preparation begins, what is the logic behind it?
All right. So at this stage, you don't have any concerns about these moves, but there's also claims that they're trying to prevent young people from registering or getting ID cards in certain areas.
Recently, the newly sworn-in IBC, the electoral body chair, did mention that there are a number of Kenyans who have not registered, not just as voters, but they have not registered as Kenyans. So there is that push. I know there is a lot of huge sums of money that the electoral body requires so that they can carry out the registration exercise in terms of voter registration. But before they do that, it is an individual's effort. You are not forced. It is your personal effort to first get an ID card, which is done at the lowest level of the administration, the chief's office, where you register as a Kenyan and then you get your ID in 30 days or so. But that notwithstanding, again, the current administration may not run away from those claims, because some of the politicians that support the current administration have openly said that they shall rig the election. So again, as much as there are claims of the current administration wanting to rig election in the next in 2027, they might not solely run away from those claims, because some of the politicians that support them have openly said that even if we don't get enough votes, we shall rig. So that again raises more than enough questions.
Tell me a little bit about the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, the IEBC. Is that an independent body? Can it be trusted? Because if they are trusted, then a lot of these machinations don't matter.
The trust to electoral body in Kenya depends on where you stand. It is an independent body. When you lose an election, it is not a trusted body. When you win an election, it is the most trusted body. So depending on Kenyan politicians, where they stand and their supporters, they normally view the electoral body in a manner that befits them. For example, when Raila Odinga was running against William Ruto, he did claim that the electoral body was not fair. and it was not independent. But this same electoral body declared more than a half of the Kenyan governors to be elected under the ODM ticket that Raila Odinga leads. More than enough members of parliament were declared by the same body. So when he lost the presidency, the electoral body was not fair. But his MPs, senators, and governors were elected and declared by the same IBC. There he has no problem. So the claim of the electoral body is not formed by angels. They must be having errors here and there. But Kenyan politicians and politics always will paint the electoral body otherwise, depending on where they stand at that particular time. Today, those who are supporting the government will say the electoral body is free, fair, is credible. But should they lose this election, the coming election, they will be the first to castigate the very, very electoral body. Those castigating it now, should they win, they will be the very first people to praise the electoral body.
All right, so, yeah, I'm curious about this, what looks like an alliance that's forming between President Ruto and Raila Odinga. What does that tell us? I mean, they were supposedly arch enemies at one point.
As they say in politics, there is no enmity. What carries the day is interest. Raila Odinga has found his interest in President Ruto's administration, just like he found his interest in President Uhuru's administration. But again, this alliance, to me, is not unique, because these are people who worked together in 2007 when we had post-election violence. They worked together as a team. And it is the same team regrouping this time round. How unique is this? Absolutely not very unique, because it is just the same politicians grouping together to take power. Should Raila Odinga leave William Ruto, what are his chances of surviving Kenyan politics? Can he really team up with the current opposition? Absolutely, the chances are very slim. So this alliance may not just end with Raila Odinga and Ruto, but this alliance may end up roping an individual like the former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka to team up with them, because Kenyan politics is more or less based on regions and ethnic groupings.
Right.
Who comes on board? And when someone comes on board, he comes with his ethnic background and political support.
Right, Gordon, we're going to have to leave it there. Fascinating times. Let's see what unfolds in the coming weeks and months. But for today, thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Gordon Kachola, who's a foreign policy consultant in Kenya, talking to us about these allegations being made by Irungu Nyakera that rigging is already underfoot. It's 7:30 rather. And it's time for your news headlines with Nolitando Butalez.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Tanzania's ruling party, the CCM, has unveiled its primary nominee list after repeated delays, marking a critical step in the country's political landscape. Cameroon opposition leader Maurice Kamto has called for calm following his exclusion from the upcoming presidential election in October. The Electoral Commission's decision has sparked concerns of unrest and is seen as a boost to 92-year-old current President Paul Biya. And pressure is growing on Israel, which, despite warnings, continues to deny that there is starvation in Gaza. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now it's time to catch up with the world of sports again as we get our full bulletin. And Musibudi Makura has our details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start here. So the Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus is anticipating much more of a physical and difficult test matches when they play against Australia in the Rugby Championship as of next month. A group of 37 players have assembled in Johannesburg for a 2-week conditioning camp ahead of the defence of their title. Included in the squad are 3 World Rugby Under-20 Championship winners from the junior Springboks. The Boks are also fresh from beating the Barbarians, Italy twice as well as Georgia in recent weeks, and of course we'll be hoping to get some great results against Australia in the hopes of defending their title. Let's take a listen to what Coach Rassie Erasmus had to say.
The first 4 matches we played, was always going to be not as tough as the Rugby Championship. Not saying in any way that Italy and those guys weren't going to bring it physically, but I just think we were compared to them in terms of developing and playing as a team. We've been together for quite a while, and we know that would be physical against those guys, but we will now go against teams that's really physical, have a good game plan, really, really good coaches.
Now included in the squad are 3 World Rugby Under-20 Championship winners. There are Batubele Hlakane, Cheswell Yoster as well as Hashim Peed, who starred for the junior Boks en route to South Africa's second Under-20 title just a few weeks back. The trio are unlikely to get a look into the Boks squad for the Rugby Championship, but Erasmus has explained the thinking behind getting them involved in the senior setup.
It's just for us to understand how quickly guys can make the step up and settle into the whole environment and the energy they bring. So the 3 of them know 100% well that there's no chance that, apart from if they really knock down the door and blow us away at training sessions, they take part in every single part of the training sessions. The boardroom sessions or the classroom sessions and the physical sessions and the scrum sessions and the mauling session, Batu and so on. So it's not like we take them out of certain things. It's not just for them to sit and listen and learn. It's for them to take part as well.
On to football news now. Burkina Faso is determined to make a mark at the upcoming Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship 2024, which kicks off this coming Saturday, the 2nd of August in Tanzania, one of the 3 nations hosting the competition, along with Kenya as well as Uganda. So the West African nation will also have the honour of playing the opening match of the competition, squaring off against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania in what promises to be a high-octane clash. Now, drawn in Group B alongside the Central African Republic, Mauritania, Madagascar as well as Tanzania, the Stadiums will look to improve on their past performances in the competition, led by the head coach Issa Balbon, who took over the reins in April of 2024. The team recently concluded a vital pre-tournament training camp in Morocco. So despite being one of the consistent participants in CHAN history, Burkina Faso has never ever managed to lift the trophy. On to tennis news now. Alexander Zverev made a storming return after a month-long break from tennis on Tuesday, with the top seed pounding out a 7-6, 6-3 win over Adam Walton to reach the 3rd round of the ATP Toronto Masters. Now, the German top seed, who lost in the Wimbledon first round, has spent the last couple of weeks dealing with mental burnout and also made a trip to Rafael Nadal's Mallorca Academy for consultations and perhaps some career advice during his time away. The ATP World number 3 came from 4-1 down in the opening set tiebreak and did not face a break point until he found himself down love 40 as he tried to serve out a victory, leading the set and 5-3. So though he lost that game, the German immediately broke back, but his Australian opponents double faulting on the Zverev match point. Now, that victory also included a massive 52-shot rally, with the triumph also putting Zverev on 499 wins in his career. And finally, India head coach Gautam Gambhir has been involved in a confrontation with Asari ground staff during a training session before tomorrow's fifth and final test match against England at the Oval. Now, video footage from the net session shows Gambhir pointing his finger at Lee Fortes, Asari's head of ground staff, and the India coach heard shouting, and I quote, "You can't tell us what to do, and you're just a groundsman, nothing beyond." Close quote. Now, speaking in a news press conference just after that altercation, India's batting coach Sinatushu Kotak, who was present during the incident, said the coaches were just inspecting the wicket for the test and were also asked to move away. So with no specific outdoor practice area, India used 3 practice wickets surrounded by nets close to the test match pitch, which is a standard procedure. The incident is the latest in a heated as well as competitive series between the two sides, with the 4th test at Old Trafford ending with India refusing to shake hands for the draw early as Ravindra Jadeja as well as Washington Asanda reached centuries in that match. So the India captain Shubman Gill also said England were acting against the spirit of cricket with time-wasting tactics during the 3rd test at Lord's last week. Now England's lead currently the 5-match series 2-1, and Ben Stokes' side are expected to make changes to the team from Manchester's draw, particularly to the bowling lineup just after 3 days in between the test matches. Well, that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Annika Longi sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheky Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste, et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheky?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Let's find out what's been happening in the world of business. And catching us up is Chanduko Ligege. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. South Africa's International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says engagements with the U.S. continue as a tariff deadline that could see 30% duties on most South African exports goes into effect on Friday. Lamola was speaking on the sidelines of a United Nations conference on the two-state solution in New York yesterday.
There has been some non-disclosure agreements that has been signed with our Department of Trade and Industry. So there is ongoing engagements that is happening, and we want to give that a chance, and hopefully an agreement can be reached. But we will continue to engage with the U.S. because, as we've always said, they are a very important strategic trading partner for South Africa. So the negotiations are very important. They are key to our economy, foreign direct investment, but also at the trade relations level. It's an important discussion that we are hopeful that there will be some agreement reached at some point.
South Africa's Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe says the country should not be bullied into trading its critical minerals based on unfavorable terms and conditions. He says South Africa should not be apologetic for being a BRICS partner because it destabilizes the balance of forces and global leadership. He was delivering a keynote address at the G20 Critical Mineral Engagement in Sandton, north of Johannesburg.
The most important thing for us as developing economies is that we should not be bullied for what we own. We must have a view, and our view must be respected, that we mine these critical minerals. People need them. They must talk to us. We must not give them critical minerals in their own terms, and our views are ignored.
Police say violent protests in Angola over a fuel price hike killed at least 4 people and led to hundreds of arrests, with unrest continuing in a few parts of the capital, Luanda. Monday's violence, which involved looting, acts of vandalism and clashes with the police, followed a government decision early this month to increase the diesel price by 1/3 to ease the strain of costly fuel subsidies on public finances. Minibus taxi associations, which in turn hiked their fares up by up to 50%, launched a 3-day strike to protest the move on Monday when the violence erupted. Dangote Refinery has withdrawn its lawsuit against Nigeria's midstream and downstream petroleum regulator and several fuel importers, including state-owned Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, over fuel imports. Dangote Refinery had brought a lawsuit arguing that the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Agency is violating the law by continuing to issue gasoline import permits to NNPC and other fuel traders. In its suit filed at Nigeria's Federal High Court, it says that the law only allows imports to address production shortfalls. The case is still scheduled to be heard in September, when the defendants may either seek costs or waive them, allowing the court to formally strike out the suit. The International Monetary Fund says it was carefully looking at the details of the trade agreements the U.S. has struck with Japan and the EU in recent days to assess their economic impact. Chief Economist and Director of the IMF's Research Department, Pierre-Olivier Gourancas, says that they will have to see how things are unfolding, adding that the trade agreements announced so far were high-level deals that still needed to be fleshed out. Gourancas says, however, tariffs agreed so far in those deals were similar to the effective U.S. tariff rate on which the IMF based its latest assumptions in its update to the World Economic Outlook. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 529, Botswana 13 pula 32, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shillings 62, Zambia 23 kwacha 11. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 58, Russia 81 rubles 61, India 86 rupee 92, China 71 18, South Africa 17 rand 91 cents. $1 is 75 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $3,327, platinum at $1,388 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $72.59 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or call us on +27 117144459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligegi.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus, anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, our time now being just 7:45 after that, Central African Time. We look more on news now. South Africa is where we're looking at. The country will continue to engage with the United States of America. This amidst a global anxiety about Trump's sweeping tariffs that will take effect on August 1st. Former President Kgalema Motlante's foundation hosted a seminar looking at how Pretoria should navigate the new order. Presidential Special Envoy in North America, Mcebisi Jonas, government officials and business communities members attended the session at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Bunolo Maribe has more.
The world is on tenterhooks as the United States of America prepares to roll out sweeping tariffs that may affect a number of countries come August 1st. Former President Kgalema Motlanthe says the country must continue to negotiate and explore other markets as well.
Negotiating and discussing with their counterparts in the United States of America. And of course, from the rest of the seminar, you heard that we shouldn't be single track-minded. We should be also opening up other tracks to try and gain more access to other markets.
Accordingly, Pretoria is still trying to thaw the frosty ties with Washington, D.C. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff decision has rattled the markets and has sent a wave of uncertainty through the global economy. International Relations and Cooperation Director General Zane Dango is still hopeful to convince the U.S. on the tariffs issue.
Part of our foreign policy is also being very clear that we cannot have an expedient foreign policy. I think if you look at the history of expediency in international relations, it's always been at the expense of those marginalized and oppressed. And our history, our values, enjoin us not to do that.
The Presidential Special Envoy in North America, Mcebisi Jonas, says these are unprecedented times, but the world should not despair.
My role really is a Presidential Special Envoy. My role is really to advise on policy, and I do engagements for sure, but I think my main focus is building South Africa's response to this reality, to the new reality, engaging with all the agencies of the state, but also engaging with all stakeholders in the private sector, in civil society and everywhere, so that South Africans speak with one voice on these issues, and also educating ourselves about what should our responses be.
This while, the US claims to have clinched a huge deal with the European Union. That includes a 15% tariff on most EU goods, $600 billion of investments in the US by European firms, and $750 billion in energy purchases over the next 3 years. I am Bonolo Maribe, SABC News.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
West Africa has seen a mix of troubling developments and symbolic milestones this week, from deadly kidnappings in Nigeria, fresh protests in Togo, to Senegal's probe into political violence. And meanwhile, Ghana is expanding its global ties. Liberia marked 178 years of independence, and US singer Ciara received Benin citizenship. Well, to help us unpack these stories, we're now joined by political analyst and conflict resolution expert, Dr. David Matsanga. Always good to talk to you. Very good morning to you, Dr. Matsanga.
Good morning, Peter Ndoro. Good morning, the rest of Africa. The lines today have not been very good, but we shall try.
Amen. Let's start in Nigeria now. Nigeria continues to grapple with rampant kidnappings and the killing of 35 hostages even after ransom was paid suggests a really worrying shift. What does this say about the state's ability to provide security and also the behavior of those that are doing the kidnapping, killing people even after ransoms paid?
Peter Ndoro, earlier on in your programs, I told you there is no state called Nigeria, or I told one of your presenters around there that there was no state called Nigeria. Nigeria is a country without a country, a state without a state. In political science, anybody who has studied that subject will tell you what that means. It means the rule of law has collapsed, governance is not there, it is a state governed by terrorism, banditry, hostage-taking, kidnap, money laundering, and many other activities. Boko Haram are there eating people, taking people, kidnapping the girls, taking them at will. The Nigerian army itself has turned on its own civilians. in the southeast. Instead of going to protect and fight Boko Haram, they fight the people in the southeast, the Biafrans, and the southeast, south. Now, Nigeria is not a state. Nigeria needs to seek for help. But unfortunately, the leadership there, they don't want help. They don't want external forces to help them. Boko Haram has grown all the way in the north of Nigeria, Maiduguri, kidnap. Even when you pay money, they kill you after you have paid the money. So what type of country is this with a population of 250 million people? The leadership has failed the people of Nigeria. And I think the best way that I have said always in Africa, the best way is rearrange Nigeria, like Congo. And I've told you, Congo will never be peaceful. Nigeria will never be peaceful. Yugoslavia is beautiful. Is now peaceful because it was rearranged. Thank you.
Okay, what about Togo, not too far away? We've seen renewed protests there targeting President Faure Gnassingbé's extended rule, and many seeing this as a dynasty power group following his taking over from his father, of course. What do you think is fueling the youth-led unrest, and how significant is this moment?
The people in Togo see what is happening in Niamey, in Niger, and what is happening in Mali, North, what is happening in Burkina Faso. The younger generation there, the officers, they are watching. It won't take long. And Peter, we shall come back here, and I'll tell you, I told you. It won't take long. The gentleman there is doing things, changing the constitution. I don't know where these people in Africa got this appetite of changing the constitution. Like, look at Ouattara. Ouattara even eliminates all his friends, and he remains alone. Yet he is also not from Ivory Coast. He's from Burkina Faso. And Mbeki. Mbeki is there. We know Mbeki, Kisano, Matsanga. We know where Mr. Ouattara comes from. But he has eliminated others on saying they belong to dual nationality. But let's come to this Togo. Togo man changes the constitution. Peter takes over, and then he said the constitution starts now. And he's in for 7 years. Now, look, what type of life is this? That one is an accident in waiting, and I don't want to predict what I want to say here. People might think I'm encouraging some other men to come on and take power, but I think Togo is a candidate for a military coup.
Wow. Okay, we'll be certainly watching that space quite closely. Senegal has opened an official investigation into the political violence seen between 2021 and 2024. How important is this for national healing, and does it restore confidence in Senegal's democratic institution?
First of all, Faye and Sonko, and let them hear me. I told them, and I've told them, there are two things that you need to do. Stabilize the population, seek reconciliation. I don't know why they took long to seek healing process. You know, after the arrests and the detentions and the removal of people from voting registers, beating people, shooting people, you needed what we call a redemption strategy. I told Faye and Sonko the first month, I said, please, if you want to do it early. After you take government, do a reconciliation, reconcile with people, and allow a commission, amnesty commission, like what you did in South Africa. South Africa is stable up to now because of what Mandela did. Truth and Justice Commission, where people come up to say, I'm sorry. Rwanda is stable, Gachacha courts. Uganda is stable, Konyi, you remember. We came back, people came back and said, sorry, we did this, we did that, we have forgiven you, we want one country. If you don't do that in Africa, time is running out for us. So if Sonko is establishing that with Faye, that is good in Senegal. But it has come at a wrong time when the two men don't see eye to eye. As I promised you, your presenter, the other one last week, I will be flying there next week to make sure that I put them together and they sit down so that they don't quarrel anymore. Thank you.
Ghana's move to extend visa-free access to 2 non-African countries is being framed as part of a global diplomatic strategy. What's your take on the motivation behind this move?
I think it's to attract investment. That's okay. That Ghana already, if it does a plus, that is very good, my brother. A plus. Because in Ghana, once you are an African, you enter and you are not a criminal. You don't have drugs. You don't have any illicit trading that you are going to do. You have a man of good conduct. In Accra Airport, you enjoy what Africa wants, what Nkrumah wanted, what Sekou Touré, Amira Kabro, Empress Haile Selassie, Jomo Kenyatta, Nyerere wanted. If an Africa integrated, you enter Ghana like you are going to some place to relax you with your sunshine. So that is a good plus for Ghana. And I thank President Mahama, my friend. Keep it up, President Mahama. And allow the world, let the world see that Africa doesn't have restrictions. And they are very strict. Ghanaian immigration, customs, narcotics, they are there. They are working. Institutions in Ghana work. And that nobody said that if you allow people in one country, they will come with bad manners. Institutions in Ghana works. If you enter, customs will check you. Narcotics will check you. Immigration will check you. The institutions there work. Yeah. There's no corruption anymore. So that is very good step forward to allow other members to come to see how hospitable we are in Africa than this thing of Trump chasing people and scared, telling them, even chaining children to get out of America. Soon it will be the heaven of Africa.
Dr. Matsanga, great talking to you. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much, and sorry for the lines. I think they are coming from your side, and here our lines have not been good, but thank you very much. Keep it. We might do a better thing next week. God bless you. God bless Africa. The struggle continues.
That's Dr. Matsanga, one of our regular commentators each week, giving us an update on West Africa. It's 8 o'clock. I'm an hour behind today, Asanda. I don't know what's going on.
It's because yesterday you were not here.
Yeah, that's
You have to take some time off sometimes to tell your mind, shift again to work mode.
Hey, there we go. It's work mode, 8 o'clock Central African time, broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm Peter Ndoro. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
My name is Asanda, Beda, and thank you so much for staying with us. At Channel Africa 1 is where we are live streaming on YouTube. Also on the SABC Plus is where you can find us. In this hour, it's Wednesday, so this is the day of the week where we profile Africans doing great and amazing things. And we'll be speaking to Kennedy Odede, who's founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities. It's a Kenyan grassroots movement that offers life-changing services to the poor. A social entrepreneur who's also the recipient of the 2025 UN Nelson Mandela Prize. That should be a great chat coming up. First, let's get our news. Here's Nolutando Butelezi, and then Musibudi Makura will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Tanzania's ruling party, the CCM, has unveiled its primary nominee list after repeated delays, marking a critical step in the country's political landscape. The announcement, made following a marathon Central Committee session, signals President Samia Suluhu Hassan's consolidation of power amid ongoing party reforms. Daniel Kijo has more.
The approved list includes candidates for parliamentary and local council seats, with the party's leadership emphasizing a commitment to unity and discipline. This follows weeks of internal debates and postponements as CCM sought to realize its lineup ahead of the upcoming primaries. Analysts say the list reflects President Samia's growing influence within the party, with key allies securing nominations while some dissenting voices were sidelined. The primaries, now set to proceed after the delays, will determine CCM's final candidates for the general elections later this year. However, critics argue that the process lacks transparency, raising concerns about internal democracy within Tanzania's long-dominant ruling party. With the elections approaching, all eyes on whether CCM can maintain its stronghold amid calls for greater political openness.
Cameroon opposition leader Maurice Kamto has called for calm following his exclusion from the upcoming presidential election set for October. The Electoral Commission's decision has sparked concerns of unrest and is seen as a boost to 92-year-old current President Paul Biya, who has been in power for decades. Kamto is reportedly under house arrest. He intends to appeal the Electoral Commission's decision. The MRC-CRM representative in South Africa, Nasto Njomakchuni, says that the government has materialized the two biggest cities in the country.
Exactly, it is very uncomfortable, but the president has sent a message out to the population to remain calm. We all know that the decision by the Electoral Commission can be appealed to the Constitutional Council. All the candidate has 2 days to appeal the decision. So yesterday, the party appealed the decision on the Constitutional Council, and the Constitutional Council has 10 days to reply to our appeal. So the president has sent a clear message to all his militant and sympathizers to remain calm and wait until the decision from the Constitutional Council.
South Africa's presidential special envoy to North America, Mcebisi Jonas, says that the world is facing unprecedented times, but there should not be despair. Jonas attended the seminar hosted by former President Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation in Johannesburg. The world is on tenterhooks as the U.S. prepares to roll out sweeping tariffs that may affect many countries come the 1st of August. Jonas says that his role is to promote South Africa's foreign policy.
My role really is a presidential special envoy. My role is really to advise on policy, and I do engagements for sure, but I think my main focus is building South Africa's response to this reality, to the new reality, and engaging with all the agencies of the state, but also engaging with all stakeholders in the private sector, in civil society and everywhere, so that South Africans speak with one voice on these issues.
South Africa's Deputy Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Andries Neil says that the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons is designed to help end the trafficking of human beings. This year's event will be observed globally under the theme Human Trafficking is Organized Crime and the Exploitation. To mark the day, the Department of Justice will launch the local task team to support anti-trafficking efforts at ports of entry across the country. Deputy Minister Nel says that they'll be at the Cape Town International Airport. Pressure is growing on Israel, which despite warnings continues to deny that there is starvation in Gaza. After an emergency government meeting, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the UK would follow France in recognizing a Palestinian state in September unless Israel took substantive steps to end what he called the appalling situation. For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the countdown has begun. 3 days now to the official start of the CHAN tournament as teams continue to arrive in Kenya, Uganda as well as Tanzania. While Desiree Ellis has been approached by SAFA to sign a new contract. We'll give you details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
All right, it's Wednesday, and this is where we shine the spotlight on Africans doing amazing things in our continent as well as on the world space. And today we speak to a Kenyan social entrepreneur and author. He's been awarded the 2025 Nelson Mandela Prize by the United Nations in New York, and the honor is bestowed every 5 years. Dr. Kennedy Odede is founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, or SHOFCO, a Kenyan grassroots movement that offers life-changing services to the poor. Growing up in Kibera, Nairobi, one of the biggest slums in Africa, Odeda's journey is one that has seen him turn his personal struggles into a movement that reaches over 4 million Kenyans, operating in over 35 counties in Kenya. Dr. Kennedy Odede, founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, joins us, and we say good morning to you, Doctor. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for making time to chat to us. So let's start there with your recent awarding of the 2025 United Nations Nelson Mandela Prize, and it was in a ceremony in New York City in the U.S. Congratulations, of course, first of all.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And talk to us.
Amazing event.
Oh, right. Yes, I can imagine. Talk to us about how you knew you'd be awarded and your initial thoughts at that time.
No, to be honest with you, it's very interesting because Nelson Mandela is somebody I admired when I was also living still in the slum, where in like a township, very tough life, and I admired him a lot. So when I didn't know that I was nominated, so when I got the news, I didn't believe it. My phone was ringing, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And it was just really, I was humbled because it's been taking me a lot of work. For me, the work I'm doing is. That's the way I was born. I was born in poverty. I was born in a tough place, and growing up in this place called Kibera was tough life, right? I was a homeless kid at a very early age, but I believed in the power of people coming together to change their own life. You don't need anybody else to come to change your life. You have to organize. You have to work together, and for me, Nelson Mandela was a leader that I still admire so much for what he did for his people and for our continent.
And let's talk about that, the award coinciding with International Nelson Mandela Day celebration. What does 18 July mean to you? We're still in Mandela Month. Having been inspired by the former statesman himself and having read his book, Long Walk to Freedom.
Yes, so that's the book that I really read when I was around 15 years old. That really inspired me a lot. And Mandela Day, the 18th, is something that is the month. It's something very powerful. I think, to be honest with you, Africa, let's be honest, we are struggling with leadership. Leaders who can think about the people, leaders who is not about them, leaders who want really to change the lives of people. I think we are starving for leadership. And I hope at this time for our continent, we can go back and start thinking and reminding the Mandela values, right? And to build Africa, because honestly, the future is Africa. But we can't have the future if we have these leaders who don't really care, honestly. Who are about egoistic, is about greediness, is about grabbing, stealing, right? And then we have Madiba, right? Who is like showing us that leadership is about service. Leadership is not about being in front, by leading from behind, So I think as young people, as Africa continent, we have to really right time to think. If we don't think well and reflect, Africa is going towards a very destructive place because the youth will not going to wait. They're not waiting anymore.
And that's something we'll touch on a little later in terms of leadership on our continent and our governments and also the space of social entrepreneurship and how that feeds into our leadership and government's service delivery, especially Kenya having been at the forefront of those conversations on the continent. Yes. Was there a significance for you then, though, that the award ceremony was in the U.S. because that's a place that represents an educational development opportunities for you since you received a scholarship to study in the U.S. Some time ago?
Yeah, for me, honestly, just to be with the head of the UN, Antonio Guterres, and be where Nelson Mandela gave the speech, right? I was the same podium, and having the member states sitting there, right? It was something really powerful, but also reminded me that you don't have to worry too much about people noticing you as long as you're doing the real job, right? So I started with a soccer ball, football, with 20 cents, right? And I was just poor person, and I didn't know how to write proposal, but I believe that the whoever wears the shoes knows where it pinches. You know, I don't want to get help from abroad or people coming to save us. You know, we have to save ourselves. So for me, it's something that when I was standing there, just remember, like, honestly, you just on keep making your steps. You just have to do what you have to do. The rest doesn't matter. The rest will just happen. You know, and it is a work that many people in my community who have been really helping me to build this organization that has become a big movement. Right, so it was a powerful because being at the United Nations, it represents the world, right? And we were like, think about it, from Kibera slums, right, the opposite, and being in that room. So it really gave me hope that as a man of hope, right, life can really change if we keep on pushing, if we keep on moving forward, right?
And life can definitely change, but let's go back to when it hadn't changed yet for you. You were 15 years old when you started SHOFCO as a teenager. You did the Shining Hope for Communities movement. What did you hope to achieve through its formation as you were starting out?
Honestly, before that, I won't go into details. Before that, I was a lost soul. I was stealing. I was in drugs. I gave up. I wanted to die. I don't care, because what poverty does for you is that's why you are willing to go to the street. You are willing to do anything because you don't care. What are you living for? Right? And then I was angry. I was so angry with the system. I see Kenya, I don't know about other countries, but I see Kenya as a place of a class country. It's all about where you were born. Who is your godfather? So I was living in this poverty. I'm like, why should I care? Let me just be a criminal, right? Because it's all about where you were born, right? And then I used to see beautiful cars on the street. I want to destroy just by anger. You're having a big car and I'm suffering. I have nothing to eat, right? And then you come across this man who did not complain, who went to prison for 27 years, right? And then bringing the jailers during his inauguration. And you are like, wow, you know? And then you realize that, you know, when you are angry, you are just destroying yourself, right? So I want to say I was crazy as a kid because I used to talk to Mandela that I didn't see because that was my mentor, right? I like, Mandela will do what in this situation, right? So the more I fall in love and I'm marrying Mandela, the more my life starts changing and the more I start not having that anger and I turn that drive into bringing people together to change, you know? So my message is that there is no problem we can't change. And we have to, and if people come together, youth, community, they are powerful. That's what I believe in. And also, I also learned that, yes, we are poor, but we are so rich, right? Even going to study in America, even now meeting rich Kenyans, I'm sorry to say that, you know, and remembering where I come from, how we are so wealthy with love. We care about other people, kids around. We want to share even the less we have, right? And then right now, people even live where they don't know their neighbors, right? Yeah. So I started seeing good things in the community and be like, okay, this is our wealth. Let's use what we have to organize ourselves, to change, to clean the street, to teach people. And then we started education like that. That's how SHOFCO started, and it became what it is today.
We are in awesome. We're in conversation with Dr. Kennedy Odede, founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, or SHOFCO. It's a Kenyan grassroots movement that offers life-changing services to the poor. Our time being 15 minutes past 8 Central African, if you've just joined us here on Rise and Shine. So you mentioned then at the age of 10 that you found yourself in a volatile and violent poverty-stricken home and environment. What would you say about that time, being in a difficult, than I guess what most people were experiencing, had contributed in terms of the personality formation for you as you were growing? What kind of person has it made you be to grow up under such difficult circumstances, and also, you know, turn your life around from a life of criminality, which you were forced into because you needed to survive the streets?
Yes. So also what happened is that I believe this. Nobody join these gangs, do bad thing, prostitution, anything because they want. Sometimes life forces you in a place that you feel like you have no U-turn, right? And for me, life was really hard. I still remember when I was really angry and I just got to steal one mango. Do you know I was killed? I was being killed by people, right? They were fighting me, and I'm like, honestly, these people are not fighting me for this mango. They are also sad. Why are they beating this kid, right? And they want me to die, right? Until a good Samaritan came in and said, hey, stop beating this kid. So even though I went through all these things on the street and this stuff in life, it's because you have no hope. It's because you feel there is no future. And if there's no future for you, you don't care. So you want to destroy your own life, okay? And I'm being honest with you. One I remember the thing that I admire most in life was to know that even the rich, they die. So that's a powerful thing on the street, knowing that even the rich people can die. Wow, death is not a problem. Let me die. Let me go hustle. If I die, even the rich die. So because in this living world, the rich are living good life, but only death that unifies us, equalizes us, right? So I felt that's what I call hopelessness. And that is my fear for our continent. With this 60% of the youth, right? If we keep on not giving them the opportunity, they will turn to the darker side. And when they turn there, you saw what happened in South Africa during COVID, when the youth, the people were feeling, what are they doing? Okay, you see what happened in Kenya, you see what happened in Egypt, in other countries. So I think, especially after COVID, what happened to us is that we have to be very careful, because if we cannot offer opportunity for these youth, as a young person, I didn't have internet, so I couldn't see how much people are wealthy, right? I only see what I was seeing on the road. But right now, they're seeing the watch their head of state is wearing.
And social media as well.
Yes, right, social media. So it's becoming even more dangerous, and more anger is rising up because they see your life now. They see, right? Whether before we couldn't see the life. You know, the family is wealthy, they stole our money, but we can't associate. But through social media, the shoes you wear, your house, your car, people see those things. So I think we need really to go back and start come with policies that have to support the youth. Otherwise, even the rich will enjoy their wealth. That's where we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the Shovco movement continued then. I mean, from the time of starting by organizing youth to play soccer and then doing drama and theater to raise awareness on issues of importance in society. It went as far as even the Kibera School for Girls, the slum's first tuition-free school for girls being started. So what does it now provide for? What initiatives fall under the movement?
Yeah, so what really started, I'm impressed how much you know a lot about it already. So what really impressed me, the idea was that what I tried to do, for me, was human potential, people. So when people are feeling that they are dignity, they are valued, they have something to offer, okay? So that was in my theory of how can I make people living in township, people living in wherever they live in villages, whatever, can they see worth in them? And when they see that, things start happening. So we're able to build a school in Kibera, as you've seen. And right now, let's speak with you. I'm very, very happy that some of our guys at Columbia University, some have gone to Harvard, some have gone to all of this, an amazing American school, and also in Kenya, right? And that was my dream. My dream was that no other kid should went through what Kennedy went, okay? And this is how you build leadership. This is how you build awareness around women to be respected, dignity like that, you know? So I also worked with the gang members who were transformed to set up a GBV center. It was an amazing story, right? So these men were now the one to arrest you, the former, and work with the police. And therefore, I brought police together with former gang members who have reformed. And we're able to keep our community safe and our women and girls safe, right? So again, we are doing what is called health. We have community health clinics in the slums. We are also working with the youth, helping them to go to university, TVET, training them, you know, and so we are doing a lot, working with women. We also found our own small SACCO, which is like a small bank where the poor put their own money and they borrow themselves. And it's amazing. They have given, they have over $10 million that have given, just free for them, because I believe that my idea is that when people come together, they will solve their own problems, you know. So I think that's what we are doing now, and people are now starting Shovcos in other places around the country. That's how it's growing.
That's
it's become the
amazing.
hope.
That is amazing. These are the
Thank you.
kind of stories we need to hear every now and again. And let's talk about social entrepreneurship generally on the continent of Africa
Yes.
and the role it plays. Where should the future of social entrepreneurship look to when it comes to funding, given the challenges of international aid cuts that we're experiencing in Africa, as well as instability, meaning more and more people are displaced, and severe food shortages we are seeing in reports of examples of South Sudan, the World Food Programme saying half the population is facing severe hunger there, and that's just one example. Where should the future of social entrepreneurship look to when it comes to where we source our funding?
So social entrepreneurs. So let's start from there. For me, what is that? Let's start. Okay. Number one, it is the challenge we are facing in Africa with is idea. Kennedy Odede, they had an idea, but there was no one to invest on him. And for your idea to be invested, you have to come from the global north. You are coming to save Africa, then you get the funding. Are you together?
Yeah.
So, but how do you work around that? The challenge we are facing is that we Africans don't believe in ourselves. How many millionaires do we have? Look at the best innovative ideas that have happened. M-Pesa, I'll be honest with you, in Kenya. UK, okay, somebody from UK, Europe, right? Yeah. Who invested on the idea, right? So if Africans can really start in each villages, county, towns, be like, what are the amazing innovative ideas we can invest on? Because we have money in Africa. We have money. The only that we don't want to invest on our people. So what happened? All the things happen in Kenya or in South Africa or in Africa, the money goes back to the global north. Why? Because the global north is where the money comes from. So I think it's a high time for Africans to start looking for solutions within themselves, right? For me, I struggle. Honestly, people look down on me. If I didn't go to American University, which is kind of sad, right? That's when I have to be noticed, right? And people to start believing my ideas. The West, sad, believed in me before my country. Let's be honest, right? Yeah. But I was doing all this work in my community. They didn't care, right? So I think we have to start investing on our own social programs. And there's something happening in America that I really kind of liked a lot. In other places, you allow even places like Shofco, for example, who are running health clinics, because they're doing it in a way that they don't spend a lot of money on it. Whereby the government doing those kind of work, it is too much expensive. Corruption. How can they partner with social entrepreneurs who are trying to change things, the communities, and the government to pay them? Believe me, it will be cheap. But they'll not do it. Why? There is no procurement where corruption happens. So they don't like that. Okay? But the truth be told is that if I find something working in Soweto, in Kibera, in wherever, why can't I as a government to fund that project? What is the problem? Okay? It's a common sense, right? But they won't do that. They will be willing to have more wage bill, okay, instead of solving the problems on the ground.
Yeah. Interesting. Hey, interesting times we live in. And then we thank the people like you who step in, because we can't always be looking at political leaders. There are so many other leaders that need the spotlight. Africa will be hosting the G20 gathering, and I want to pick your head on this one. It will be for the first time this year of 2025. If you could curate the meetings on especially social entrepreneurship for even startups, what topics would you compile?
No, I think the challenge is the youth, the youth in Africa, and where is the job? Okay, and honestly, I find it really, I don't know, maybe because I'm not in the government, that's why these things look for me simple, right? But I have to be careful because I'm not sitting in that office. Because honestly, why do you have to send away our raw material? Let's start from there. Why? Why do you have to send away our raw materials? Why can we do our own manufacturing? What is the problem on that, right? Why? How can we not have freedom of access? It's easier for me to go to Europe than to go to other countries in Africa. I'm sorry to say that. Yes, right? So Africa is powerful. Africa is wealthy. But I think the same thing I was saying in my community. I don't think our African heads of state see the power we are. I don't think they see it. If they knew who we are, they could be united and they could be negotiating as a continent, not as a tiny Kenya, not as a tiny South Africa. No, it's a time for us to start negotiating, to create jobs for our people, to start talking on African issues, right? And be like, if you go to South Africa, you find there's Kenya, but look, it'll make me so sad. This is what's happening in the world now. Look at the Trump has to go and talk to the one person, the head of EU. You saw that? And they were negotiating for Europe. Tell me when our leaders will come together and face even the America, be like, hey, we as Africa. No, they go there, they're being told about their English, okay? They go there, they're being treated as children. They're going there like school children. We don't want to, what Nyerere was fighting for, what Madiba was fighting for, Kwame Nkrumah was fighting for, was for Africa to have one voice. We are doing into our small pieces, so we are taken for as a token, So I think nothing will happen in Africa until our leaders stop being greedy and believing in uniting and knowing that the challenge we're facing in Africa now and the opportunity is just the youth. It is a challenge and the best opportunity if it can be explored.
As we talk of opportunities that can be explored, you also touch on an issue of technological advancement, as well as another one of Africans working together. We recently learned about Kenya and Tanzania launching a cross-border fiber link to boost digital integration. When you look at the youth, and we touched on the youth and how much more exposed they are, certainly than we were on the internet and social media platforms, the importance of a future digital world. How can initiatives like these, especially those that focus on the East African collaboration, fit both in digitization visions and connectivity needs of the ordinary youth, as how you see it?
Yes. So I really love what's working on Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania working on. That's really, really powerful. And those kind of initiatives, we need to talk about it, right? And another thing, what they need also to work on, the youth. I think the Gen Z, these people, them and technology is like no different. They're the same. I look at them, I'm like, wow, you guys are crazy, right? So, but what they're crying for is that there is no policies that really enable them, okay, to grow. They are willing to grow, but so my challenge, my point would be that how can the government sit down with these content creators, with these technologists, these youths, okay, and how can we? It's simple. How can we make your job easier? Is it easy to register a company in Kenya or in Africa, or is there anything you're given if you create a job for more people, for youth? Is there a tax break? Is there something? So I think now what's remaining, because the ground is ready. The ground is really ready for innovation. Yeah. It's already happening without the government. But I think the government role now should be like, how do we make it possible, right? Because if you don't do that, what we are seeing in our innovation in Africa, it is being led from the global north. They're just hiding, but it's their companies. The thing they're seeing amazing happening in Africa is follow the money. The money goes back to the global north. So I think that as Africa and as leaders, how can we make the policies make it possible? And it's a simple question you ask, like, how can I be enabler? How can I make the youth? How can I make it easier? Right? Because the youth are really crying across Africa, honestly. They feel like these old people don't understand. Okay? So if they don't understand.
And I wish we could continue this chat, Dr. Odede, but we have to leave it there for today. We really take our hats off to you. Also, having received the 2014 People's Choice Award for Outstanding Social Entrepreneur, were named under the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and you got the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Prize in 2014. So there was still so much to talk about that we didn't get to, but I have to throw that in there just so everybody understands why we say we take our hats off to you. We really appreciate your time.
I'm humble. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time too. Thanks for sharing the work.
Our pleasure. Yeah. Dr. Kennedy Odede is founder and CEO of Shining Hope for Communities, also the recipient for the 2025 Nelson Mandela Prize by the United Nations. That was just in 2025, because you heard me shouting out in terms of the other awards and accolades that he has achieved, and of course the great work he's doing for the people not just of Kenya but of East Africa. That's our Wednesday profile on this 30th of July. It's 8:31 Central African time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
The Constitutional Court in South Africa will today hear an urgent application lodged by Umkhonto weSizwe Party to have President Cyril Ramaphosa reverse his decisions to place Police Minister Senzo Mchunu on leave of absence. Tanzania's ruling party, the CCM, has unveiled its primary nominee list after repeated delays, marking a critical step in the country's political landscape. And today marks World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. I'll have more details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time for us to find out what's been happening in the world of sport as we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Good morning once again from the Sports Desk. Now, SABC Sport has established that Banyana head coach Desiree Ellis has been offered a new contract by the South African Football Association, but the two parties are yet to come and agree on the finer details going forward. So Ellis has just returned from the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco, where Banyana finished in 4th place and will be expected to provide a report to the National Executive Committee within the next coming days. The public broadcaster has also been informed, however, that the contents of that report will not decide whether Dr. Desiree Ellis stays on as the head coach of this team. Burkina Faso is determined to now make a mark in the upcoming Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship Chan tournament, which officially kicks off this coming Saturday, the 2nd of August in Tanzania, one of the 3 hosting nations of this competition, alongside Kenya as well as Uganda. Now, the West African Union will also honour the player of the opening match of the competition, squaring off against the Taifa Stars of Tanzania in what promises to be a high-octane match. Now, drawn in Group B alongside the Central African Republic, Mauritania, Madagascar as well as Tanzania, the Stallions will look to improve on their past performances in the competition. Led by the head coach Issa Balbon, who took over in April of last year, the team recently concluded a vital pre-tournament at training camp in Morocco. So despite being one of the most consistent participants in Chan history, Burkina Faso has never, ever won an African Nations Championship competition. Onto this now. Final tweaks aside, a positive result will be massively important for the Springbok women's side when they take on the Black Ferns at the Athlone Stadium in Cape Town in South Africa's Western Cape province on Saturday, as this will be their final match before the Rugby World Cup starts in England next month. Now, that was the message of Franzel September, one of the team's assistant coaches, after the Bok women's side was put through their paces at the University of Cape Town's rugby field on Tuesday, with a strong focus, of course, on the set pieces ahead of this World Cup. South Africa, having, of course, participated in this World Cup back in 2022, will be hoping, of course, that things go well for them in terms of at least making it out of the group stages of the global showpiece. Let's hear from September as he speaks about the preparations of the side.
I think the motto for us is we still want to, it's our last match before we go to the World Cup, last warm-up match before World Cup. We still want to end up with a good result and a positive mindset of before we head into the World Cup. So it's important for us to end good. All our prep went according to plan so far. So we're looking forward to this challenge, our last challenge before World Cup, yes.
On to cycling news now. Tadej Pogacar will skip the Vuelta de España in order to rest after winning the 4th stage of the Tour de France and making it his 4th title of that competition. The 26-year-old UAE Team Emirates XRG rider sealed his Tour de France title on Sunday after weeks of dominance, but also said fatigue had crept in during the final days. His previous Tour de France titles came in 2020, 2021 as well as in 2024. 2024. Pogacar will return to action at the one-day races in Quebec as well as Montreal in September before shifting his focus to the UCI Road World Championships in Rwanda, where he is the defending champion. Pogacar is yet to win the Volta a España, having captured 3 stage wins and also securing the younger rider classification in his only appearance back in 2019. The Volta a España runs from the 23rd of August until the 14th of September. And finally, Alexander Zverev made a storming return after a month away from tennis on Tuesday, with the top seed pounding out a 7-6, 6-3 win over Adam Walton to reach the third round of the ATP Toronto Masters. The German top seed, who lost in the Wimbledon first round a few weeks back, has spent the last weeks dealing with mental burnout and also made a trip to Rafael Nadal's Mallorca Academy for consultations and perhaps some career advice during his time away. The ATP World Number 3 came from 4-1 down in the opening set tiebreaker and also did not face a break point until he found himself down love 40 as he tried to serve out victory, leading the set and 5-3. Now, though he lost that game, the German immediately broke back with the Australian opponent double faulting on a Zverev match point. Now, his victory included a massive 52 rally shot, with the triumph putting Zverev currently on 499 wins for his career. Well, that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
And for your business news, we say good morning once again to Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. South Africa's Department of Electricity and Energy Deputy Director General Zizamele Mbambo says they will explore explore all financing options for the expansion of the country's nuclear energy program. The program has been in operation since 1984. The department will convene its third G20 Energy Transitions Working Group meeting in Sun City in the Northwest Province this week. The three-day meeting will see collaborations and knowledge sharing amongst global stakeholders about the role of nuclear energy amongst others as the world tries to mitigate the effects of climate change. Bambo elaborates.
There are innovative financing options that can be explored in terms of deploying the nuclear power program. So in our view, there is opportunities that South Africa would be able to afford a nuclear power program, looking into a combination of different financing options that are available in the market and seeing which one would work best for the country.
South Africa's International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola says engagements with the U.S. continue as a tariff deadline that could see 30% duties on most South African exports goes into effect on Friday. Lamola was speaking on the sidelines of a UN conference on the two-state solution in New York yesterday.
There has been some non-disclosure agreements that has been signed with our Department of Trade and Industry. So there is ongoing engagements that is happening, and we want to give that a chance, and hopefully an agreement can be reached. But we will continue to engage with the U.S. because, as we've already always said, they are a very important strategic trading partner for South Africa. So the negotiations are very important. They are key to our economy, foreign direct investment, but also at the trade relations level. It's an important discussion that we are hopeful that there will be some agreement reached at some point.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he might send someone else to represent the U.S. at the upcoming Group of 20 G20 Leaders Summit in South Africa in November. He told reporters that he has a lot of problems with South Africa because of its bad policies. Trump has cut off aid to South Africa and offered Afrikaans farmers asylum based on a fantasy version of South African land rights. Pretoria has clarified that the recently adopted Expropriation Act is not a tool for land seizure, but rather a constitutionally mandated legal process designed to ensure equitable access to land. The African Development Bank arm lending to low-income countries will start raising $5 billion from capital markets every 3 years from 2027 as donor countries such as the U.S. cut support. The Africa Development Fund facility has provided $45 billion in concessional credit to 37 low-income African countries since it was established in 1972. It counts the U.S. as its biggest cumulative donor, but President Donald Trump's administration wants to cut $555 million in funding. In North Africa, Morocco's annual trade deficit widened by 18.4% to $17.8 billion in the first 6 months of this year. Imports were up 8.9% from a year earlier to $43 billion, outweighing exports at $26 billion, up 3%. Morocco's automotive industry, which includes Stellantis and Renault factories, was the leading export sector at $8.4 billion, despite a 3.6% drop. Morocco also has the world's largest phosphate reserves and reported a 19% increase in exports of the mineral and its derivatives, including fertilizers, to $438 million. Now let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 529. Botswana 13 pula 32. Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 62. Zambia 23 kwacha 11. $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 58. Russia 81 ruble 61. India 86 rupee 92. China 71.18. South Africa 17 rand 91 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound, 87 to the euro. Commodities: gold is at $3,327, platinum at $1,388 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $72.59 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Well, it's been 22 years since the African Union's heads of state meeting that signed a protocol for the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of women in Africa. But how much has actually changed since then? It became known as the Maputo Protocol. In South Africa, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities says that it's concerned about the rising cases of domestic and intimate partner violence. A 2024 study by the country's Human Sciences Research Council says that 1 in 3 women in South Africa have experienced physical, intimate partner violence in their lifetime. So what can be done to curb violence against women in South Africa? We speak now to Lisa Vetten, who's a research associate of the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies at Wits University in Johannesburg. Lisa, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning to your listeners.
All right, so 22 years since the AU heads of state signed that protocol, the Maputo Protocol. Last week, I spoke to the Special Rapporteur on the African Union signing yet another officially, what is it called? The Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, another charter convention that was signed. I mean, we write these things, we commit to doing something about it. 22 years on since the Maputo Protocol, has the needle moved at all, do you think?
I'll speak to South Africa, and I'll say that if we compare South Africa now to South Africa in the 1990s, then yes, we can definitely see reductions in women's murders, for example. Statistics tracking the problem at a time. But the problem remains very high. South Africa's statistics still remain very high, even if they were what they were 30 years ago. So to go back to your personal points.
All right, Lisa, we're having trouble with your line at the moment. It's not great, so I'm going to hand you back to my producers, and then we're going to try and get hold of you again, and hopefully the conversation will be a little bit better. All right, we're talking to Lisa Vetten, who's a well-known commentator, researcher on gender-based violence, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the situation in South Africa in particular, because I think this is an area that she's, a country that she lives in and has been studying and looking at. And she was beginning there to tell us that despite what we see, and of course what we see in the news headlines, what she said is that if you compare South Africa now to perhaps 20 years ago, there does seem to be an improvement in terms of dealing with gender-based violence. But for many of us on the outside looking in, if that's an improvement, then it's pretty scary what was happening 20 years ago. So I wonder what the situation is like on the other parts of the continent. This convention that was signed, I think 6 countries have signed it now, and they're hoping that once it's ratified by member countries, it will become law. Hopefully we will be able to see things improving as governments commit themselves to it. But let's go back to Lisa now. And Lisa, if you could just start that answer again. I was wondering, 22 years on, have things improved since the Maputo Protocol?
Well, if we use South Africa as an example, then I think we can see from statistics that violence towards women, specifically in the forms of murder and rape, has decreased if we compare it to the 1990s. But even though it's decreased, I think South Africa remains a country with extremely high levels of violence. And what we seem to now have is a problem that is chronic and intractable. So we commit to things, we put in place plans, we sign pledges, we do run all sorts of programs and projects, but they don't really seem to be able to, I think, take us even further below that figure we've been stuck on since about 2010.
You've studied this issue for many, many years now. Why does violence against women remain so deeply entrenched in our society?
I wish there was a quick and simple answer to that. There are many reasons, and I think they're also linked to why South Africa has problems of violence generally. And I think what we have not really been able to do is think about how do we change the social conditions of people's lives. South Africa remains a very unequal society, both in relation to gender, I think our history of racial inequality, as well as income inequality. And what we can see from other countries is that where you have high levels of inequality, you also have very high levels of violence. And I think we need to look beyond we need to think, how do we address the inequality between men and women at the same time as we address those other forms of inequality, which is a large challenge if we want to make the kind of difference that will really move the needle, as you've suggested.
What role does something like culture play? I mean, I grew up Christian, and one of the things that we were taught is the man is the head of the household. And some people take that literally, quite literally, with the disciplining of children, and then women get counted as a child in the house. And then we have the patriarchal societies, again, which is very much a part of African culture. Do these contribute as well to what we're seeing?
Yes, they do. And I think the important thing about culture, which we perhaps don't always attend to as we should, is that it's one thing to say we need to change culture, but we're not always very good at saying, well, what do we replace it with? We can identify what's wrong, but we can't say what needs to be different. And I think for many people, if you do change culture, it means losing an important part of their identity and a way of being in the world. So if you want to persuade people to give up and behave differently, we have to think of ways to replace those whatever value that behavior has for them, with something that they value equally. So again, good at identifying what the problem is, but not always able to say, well, this is what we can do instead.
You talked about poverty, inequality. Is there a specific group of women that are more vulnerable to gender-based violence than others?
Well, the HSRC research seemed to suggest that is the case. I think their research did highlight that Black women in particular do record high levels of violence. But that's because I think they sit at these multiple levels of inequality in a way that women who, like white women, for example, simply haven't had to experience. The other group who they identified as also being at very high risk, who we almost never pay attention to, is women with disabilities, who again are sitting at the intersection of a whole host of additional inequalities. So I think it's back to this point that if you want to make a difference, we need to think about how all these different problems can interlink in one person's life to make things more of a risk or less of a risk.
How do we change societal attitudes? We hear people being beaten up next door, literally, and we do nothing about it. And there's always this attitude that if a man is fighting with his wife, it's a domestic issue, as if because it's domestic, it's not important.
I think the other thing that people often worry about is, not wanting to get involved in other people's private business. So one of the things that could, I think, be useful is for us to think about how do you equip people to constructively and helpfully intervene in a problem? Because unfortunately, there are occasions when people do get involved, but they can often end up with the best intentions actually aggravating the problem. So I think if you were to be able to say to people, this is how you can intervene and help to de-escalate situations, in ways that will perhaps encourage the man at the end of it to go and look for help, or the woman to feel in some way supported. And also, I think for people to recognize when they should actually be calling the police, because it is unfortunate that, sometimes you can run a risk yourself in getting involved. So it's how to help people identify what is difficult and what do you do in these different situations. And that would be helpful not just in relation to domestic violence, but I think all of our conflicts.
We often talk about changing the boy child, teaching them differently. We're 22 years on since the Maputo Protocol, so that means there's a whole generation of young men that have turned 18 since. Are we starting to see men approach this differently as a result of interventions, or is again still a lot of work to be done?
That is one area where there has been a definite shift. If I think of the number of decades I've been involved in this work, men are much more likely to have different attitudes, and I think to speak up and challenge each other. But that is not every single man. And I think what we should be thinking about now is, why is it that some things work for some men but not for all men? And I think to stop treating men as a single category who are identical, and to figure out what it is that perhaps encourages some men to hold on to violent ways of relating in the world, and how do we shift that?
Lisa, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much indeed. Always your insights on these issues always greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Peter.
That's Lisa Vetten, who's speaking to us. She's with the Southern Center for Inequality Studies at Wits University. Gender-based violence. I don't know how long we have to keep on talking about this and not actually getting things done. Right, coming up after the 9 o'clock news is On the Move. And On the Move is Brother Benjamin, who's in studio now. So a question for both of you.
Yeah.
Every woman knows a woman who's being beaten up,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
For some reason, men, we seem to not know anyone doing the beating up. How is that? Why is that?
Do you think that the men don't know?
Do you know?
Or they say they don't know.
I think we might know one or two, but women know a lot.
Yeah, that's true though.
Yeah.
I actually agree with Peter. We don't know. Let's be honest. We don't. No,
Yeah.
we don't. Men don't know about other men who beat other women. Because these men are very secretive about how they do it as well. They're very systematic. And also it's victimization. You must remember they're finding a weaker victim. So they won't make it known to other men that this is what they do.
This is what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
And the perception is probably we defending other men in what they're doing. But no, that's not actually
because I guess they
the full
manipulate
story.
you guys to believing that there are these amazing people.
Yes,
Whereas
absolutely.
behind closed doors, it's a different story.
Yeah.
Because then with a woman will go to another woman to cry.
say,
Yes,
exactly.
another
So
man
that's why
won't
we
go to
know.
another man's beat my wife up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so On the Move.
Yeah, now I don't want to change the topic. So difficult to go to a different topic on this one.
Yeah.
But when last have you guys done anything for the first time? Like for the first time?
Wow.
I went to Mpumalanga for the first time this
that's
past
cool.
weekend.
Nice.
Yeah, I
Okay.
enjoyed my
Where have
trip.
you been?
Wow, that is such a powerful
I
question.
was out and about.
Wow. That's brilliant.
You can't think of one.
Actually, right now I can't. That is fantastic.
So that's
very good.
that's going to be the conversation.
Oh,
like,
wow.
you know, the older we get, we
Yeah.
stop doing things for the first time.
Yes.
And I wonder why we stop exploring, trying new things
Do you know
out.
what,
Yeah.
You've changed my life today.
You should have this on your podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Fantastic.
That's how we end the
That's
show.
Fantastic. Eh?
Rise and shine.
For the first time. I'm gonna do a lot more things for the first time.
Yeah.
My
We've
brain
got
is
some
spinning
thinking
now.
to do. We've got some thinking to do. I'll give you some ideas maybe tomorrow morning. And do join us from 6 till 9 tomorrow. Rise and shine. But for now, we say goodbye.
And the news is next with Nolutando Putele.